This is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Good afternoon, Steve Laffey here. Great to talk to you today, and great to have you listening, and we appreciate it. Steve Laffey at laffeyradio.com, L-A-F-F as in Frank, E-Y. You know, when I was growing up, too many people put Lassie with an S. So I always say as in Frank, E-Y. But laffeyradio.com is where we are. We're also on Facebook. We appreciate you liking it. We appreciate the follows on Twitter. We've got a great new, well-edited Fixing America Presents this morning, one of the high-value production items we do that you really need to take a look at. It's about the Farm Bill, and send that to your friends. It may be the best one we've done. It gets right to the point of what you need to know in 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, I guess. And Laffey Minutes are coming out every day. I put out a Laffey Buzz for you tomorrow morning. We probably should have done a show on Lincoln's birthday. It's today. We just didn't think about it. And one of the reasons we don't think about it, so they have this silly President's Day. Like, we don't want to celebrate all the presidents, like the one we have today and the one before that and the one before that, the one before that. But we do want to celebrate the one before that, but not the one before that or the one before that or the one before that or the one before that, but the one before that we do. See, there's only several that really have done a decent job. Of course, Lincoln, I mean, if he's not number one, he's number two, right? Maybe some people might say he's number three, but he's up there. That's why he's on Mount Rushmore. And that's why, thankfully, there is no more room. Did you know this, by the way? There is no more room on Mount Rushmore, thankfully. Well, you can see 10 years from now trying to put up Barack Obama up there with Teddy Roosevelt and the gang. Anyway, that's not what the show is about today. The show today is in a small way about the Congressional Budget Office, which are the economists who work for the government, who I don't think are corrupt or anything like that. They use a very static analysis. They're not really people who really look into the fact that once you make an action, there's a reaction, another reaction, all the way through the economy over years. So they look at it in a very static way. So they always sometimes underestimate or overestimate certain things, I think. But the bottom line is that since they're not a group of corrupt people, like some of the people we'll talk about today, generally speaking, they put out a lot of data. It's very hard to read, especially if you're not an economist, haven't been trained in reading their statistics. But they put out basically an update. And by the way, people do follow it, both Republicans and Democrats, and they at least look at it in both parties as something like, oh, we should pay attention to. And of course, people use it for their own means and twist the words and so forth. But they do look at it. So that's why we want to talk about it today, because they came out, I guess it was late last week, but over the weekends when it started to get some push, and said that Obamacare won't just take away 800,000 job equivalents, and we'll get into that terminology, over the next, say, 10 years. It'll take away 2.5 million jobs equivalents over the next 10 years. So it was a huge uptick in the analysis. And it really, what do you say? I mean, it is going to take away jobs. Now, to be very clear, when the CBO does this, they didn't say, like many people reported, 2.5 million people would lose their jobs. They said job equivalents, so they take hours, like a 40-hour work week, and someone loses 2 hours, and that'd be 2 divided by 40. So quite frankly, it's not just 2.5 million job equivalents. It's more like 50 million people work a couple of hours less. Like, you can think of it in that way also. 50 million people out of the 100 million people working today, 100 and some odd million people who work today, or everybody's going to lose an hour, or because some people are going to lose their jobs entirely due to Obamacare, and some people are going to lose a couple hours. Some people are going to go below that 30-hour equivalent. But there's much more to the story than just that. we'll do that. And we'll hear from people. And by the way, as you hear this throughout this hour, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy thing, but the Democratic Party platform, they must have a meeting where they say, we're going to say this. Like, this is the word you're going to say. Flexibility, job lock, whatever it is. And so when you hear these quotes, you're going to hear terms, or I'm going to read to you terms and sentences and phrases. They all use the same exact one. So they're masters, I guess. I'm not saying this really is a meeting, but somebody says, listen, let's talk about flexibility in the job market. And let's make this a good thing that people are going to work less hours because we want to be like, you'll hear this, like Denmark. I never heard a congressman in my life say we want to be like Denmark. By the way, I love Denmark. I think they're great. I just didn't know we wanted to be like Denmark. I thought they wanted to be like us. I thought that was the whole thing about American exceptionalism, that everybody wanted to be like us. But now we have people who are elected to office say we should be more like Germany. These are real things that people really say now. And it's because they're lying. So they got to think of something to say. So how do we start this off? We probably best to start this off by just tell you what really has been happening. I'm going to play a clip from the CBO. It's from Doug Elmendorf, and being asked in front of Congress. I think it was Congressman Paul Ryan asking him the question. But let's just start so you have some inkling of what's really going on here and how people are handling it and how the CBO has actually handled it. Here you go.
Well, the CBO says over the next decade, Senators, that there will be 2.5 million fewer workers working full-time because of Obamacare. Here is the CBO director, Doug Elmendorf.
By providing heavily subsidized health insurance to people with very low income and then withdrawing those subsidies as income rises, the act creates a disincentive for people to work relative to what would have been the case in the absence of that act.
Now, Republicans say this proves that Obamacare is a job killer. Democrats say it means that fewer people will be locked into jobs.
That's Chris Wallace asking the question, but that's a clip from the head of the CBO being asked. And he clearly states something that is, it's got to be so obvious. Like, did you have to do another study about it? I brought in, and we're going to talk a long time about the 11-page addendum to the study because there's no way to really talk about the whole study without spending, 8 or 9 hours on it and going through the numbers on it. But what people have grasped a hold of is this disincentive to work. But this is a bigger question because a lot of things have happened this week. So let's put it in just this week, this news has come out about the CBO. Also, President Obama has violated the law again. We talked about this yesterday by just telling people who have employers between 50 and 99 that you don't have to worry about paying the penalty for making sure your workers have health insurance until 2016. You put it off for another year. So we've got that. And then today and yesterday, it's about to happen today. The Senate will vote, and it looks as though there'll be 5 Republicans to join them if they need 60 votes, as Ted Cruz is admirably trying to get them to do. In the Senate today, to raise the debt ceiling. But they're raising the debt ceiling for another year, but with no cap. So when you put this all together, what you're going to learn here today is that Obamacare and the disincentives to work is part of the problem. But even the people who think this provides a more flexible work week or people won't be involved in job lock, in other words, they can't leave their jobs. No one wants to put any constraints on spending for any of these programs. So while it might be nice for everybody to be able to leave their jobs and become entrepreneurs and start hot dog stands and not worry about having health insurance, which, by the way, you don't have to worry about now because it's something called the COBRA law, which for 18 months, it may be longer than that now, but for at least 18 months, you just can keep your health insurance with your employer, even if you don't work there. If you've worked there, longer than whatever it is, 6 months or so, maybe it's a year. So for most people, these things already exist. And that is true about almost all the contentions of people who still like Obamacare, who think that it's better to have a flexible work week. So it doesn't take a genius to really start to understand that when you are moving up the Obamacare ladder from being really poor to getting a job, that when these subsidies go away, there's at least, here's a guy right here, there's at least a 15% tax, marginal tax, as it goes up. It doesn't take a genius or the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, to write a lengthy study to realize that some people will stop right here at 15 grand, or they'll stop right here at 25 grand or 50 grand because, one, some of them won't make much more. So they'll say, why am I going to go make 4 grand more, pay taxes on that at a marginal rate of, let's say it's 28%, when my health insurance then will cost an extra, I don't know, whatever it's going to be, $1,000. And so it's like a wash. Plus I'm taking some risk by trying to make some more money. So that's one of the problems that we have, that people are in total denial about how bad Obamacare really is. That even today, they are trying to come up with ways to say that it's actually good. And then even Republicans relying on CBO studies, and the CBO study itself does not entertain at all how tragic and how costly this will be for American productivity. Because the CBO, as we'll go through, does not even take into account like the productivity loss. There are things that they can't measure, don't even try to measure. Then you have to ask yourself this other question, and we'll end up this segment with this. The CBO does a study on one part of our economy, healthcare, and says that it's going to cost a net equivalent of 2.5 million jobs. There's another guy who's in the Wall Street Journal, Mulligan, economist Mulligan, out of University of Chicago, who's one of the principal guys who got the CBO to relook at their numbers. He thinks it's at least double that, 5 million jobs. I think it might be double that. But the problem really lies in a bigger picture. Since the war on poverty, and since all these programs are in place, why don't we talk about all the programs that provide all the disincentives for people to be all they can be and reach their American dream? We've got 80, 100 different welfare programs. We've got 100 million people on some sort of substance, some sort of benefits from the government. We've got 1 out of 5 families on food stamps. So they can't get food stamps when they move up the ladder. So when you look at it, it's not just more complicated, but it's far more. I mean, we are developing a nation of people who won't work the way the previous generations did. Right? There are subsidies to go to college. So all of these things add up. And so anybody trying to get out of this poverty, by the way, with the federal involvement in education so that they've learned less, trying to get out of poverty or get from lower middle class to middle class or whatever we define these things, these marginal rates of what you lose in the earned income tax credit, in food stamps, in Medicaid, I could just keep putting my finger down, right? Over and over and over again, whether it's at the state level or the local level, means for many people, the disheartening thing is that we don't have the incentives for them to climb out of this trap, and so they can't live the American dream, and they can't be all they can be. And we've now gone this for several generations, and look where we are. Forget the 2.5 million jobs that the CBO was talking about for a second. We're going to come back and go into depth on that. But think about the 10 million jobs that are missing from this recovery from 2009, March, I suppose, till today, almost March, when it's February of 2014, that we're missing in any normal recovery 10 million jobs. And then add into it that both parties think it's perfectly okay to raise the debt on our children as a way to fund all this complete nonsense and lack of incentive for people to work. We're not that far from a total collapse financially of our country. I mean, years, not decades, years. Because we can't take on the debt, but we can't combine the debt with all these things that are going on. We've got to take a break. Steve Laffey, Steve Laffey's Fixing America at LaffeyRadio.com. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll delve right into the CBO report.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
It has no sound, yet I have heard it in the whispered retelling of honorable sacrifices made by those who have served before me. The call to serve has no form, yet I have clearly seen it in the eyes of men and women infinitely more courageous and more driven than most. The call to serve has no weight, yet I have held it in my hands. I will commit to carry it close to my heart until my country is safe and the anguish of those less fortunate has been soothed. The call to serve is at once invisible and always present. And for those who choose to answer the call, for their country, for their fellow man, for themselves, it is the most powerful force on earth. America's Navy, a global force for good.
Students, when I call the reason for your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium without your high school diploma. Too tired, family trip, sick day, starting the holidays early.
Starting in the 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more of school in a year for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You see me around the neighborhood and you tell me that I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm one out of every 5 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we can grow up to be whatever we want. I want to grow up to be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry.
There's enough food in this country to feed everybody.
Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 8 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we are Feeding America, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. The Congressional Budget Office, Washington's nonpartisan scorekeeper, dealt a big blow to the president's health care law this week. A CBO report said Obamacare subsidies create incentives for millions of Americans to work fewer hours or not to work at all.
Wow. Just a quick comeback here. This is Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We appreciate you listening in. That's Chris Wallace reading off again some part of the report that, shockingly, that Obamacare provides disincentives for people to work. Let me go into one thing that happened in 2011, and I got this. I didn't realize this, but it really irks me. There's an article here from the Wall Street Journal that I want to go into in depth, and it's from the Wall Street Journal, but it's about Casey Mulligan. And Casey Mulligan is a University of Chicago economist who delved into this Obamacare early on and using some of his, by the way, not to put the guy down, he seems like a brilliant guy and a true economist trying to find the answers. But what would be simple to try to figure out what the marginal rate would be for people to be disincentivized to go to the next level of income, right? You're making $25,000 a year, and if you go to make 30, your health insurance goes up $3,000, but you only make 5 more, and you're going to pay $1,500 more in taxes, so you're going to try to make $5,000 more to keep $500, right? Your marginal rate will be 90%. So a lot of people won't want to do that. They won't even do it if it's 50% because there's a lot of work to make a lot less money per hour. So we have all these disincentives in our tax code anyway for people to keep leaping up, all the subsidies that are giving. But he points out in part of his article that, let me find it right here, what he says. This is Casey Mulligan, pointing to a 2011 organized by Harvard's David Cutler, an economist at Harvard, and University of Chicago's Herod Polak. signed by dozens of left-leaning economists, including Nobel laureates, stating, quote, the strong conclusion that Obamacare will strengthen the economy and create 250,000 to 400,000 jobs annually. So I went and grabbed the letter. And this is what we should be concerned about in America. There's hundreds of people who signed this. Hundreds. Senior professors at Wellesley College. I mean, I printed it all off. I shouldn't have done it because it's not worth the paper it's printed on, these people's names. You got Professor of Economics Jonathan Gruber. He teaches at MIT. You got Distinguished Professor of Economics Michael Grossman. He's at City University of New York. You got people who are professors of economics. Oliver Hart at Harvard University. Don't take a class with him. Ted Joyce, Baruch College, professor of economics and finance. This is like dealing with these people I dealt with at the University of Rhode Island. I taught the top finance course at the University of Rhode Island. And I am so disgusted by what goes on in college and universities today with the people, what they teach, who was teaching, that it's outrageous. But let's go through what they wrote in 2011. I think you've got to hear this. Because this gets to another whole angle, that there are people out there that either are so dumb that teach our children, teach our young adults at college, either they are so dumb they know nothing about economics, or because their mind is so warped on what they want to accomplish, which is destroy America or have people not work or make sure people don't get rich or whatever it is, whatever it was, like the bullies around you growing up who didn't want you to get ahead, right? Whatever it is, that's who they are. And they're powerful people who write for all of the articles you read, the sources that you see on ABC and CBS, and almost all of them. These are the people they go to. These are the studies that they cite. Whoever signed their name to this document should never teach. Dear Chairman Ryan, this is a letter to Congressman Ryan and Chris Van Hollen, ranking member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Congress this week is holding hearings, this is 2011, on the economic impact of health care reform. We write to convey our strong conclusion that leaving in place the patient Obamacare will significantly strengthen our nation's economy. Really? If it was strengthening the economy, why would President Obama be delaying all parts of it to any way he could to get to the next election cycle? Really? Why would he be doing that? If it was strengthening the economy, when they rolled out that website, wouldn't everybody be on it if they could? So we know it's not that, but listen to their reasons. I should go back and teach, I guess. Strengthen our nation's economy over the long haul and promote more rapid economic recovery in the immediate years ahead. Really? They go on to repealing it would cause needless harm. Needless harm. Our conclusion is based on two economic principles. First, high medical spending harms our nation workers. Okay. New job creation, and overall economic growth. Many studies demonstrate that employers respond to rising health insurance costs by reducing wages, hiring fewer workers, a combination of two. You don't need a study going to tell you that when you have a high input cost for what you have to hire, you will hire less of it, right? High medical spending. What is in the Obamacare legislation and what was in today's and yesterday's raising the debt ceiling over our unbelievably growth in health care spending on Medicare, Medicaid, the VA hospitals and so forth, aside from Social Security. But our health care costs, which have been going out of control for years. What is in there that stops it? There's nothing in there. There's no provisions. We don't say like we should, the government's going to spend 10% of gross domestic product or some number on health care, and that's it. We're not going any higher. Lack of universal coverage impairs job mobility. It's not the lack of universal coverage. We all want, and Republicans wanted, and I want, the ability to take your health insurance like you can your other insurance across state lines. That's not singular to Obamacare. Why not point out something that would be positive? That insurance would be across state lines. That you could take it, and then you would be mobile, and you wouldn't have to worry about leaving jobs. Again, nothing really due particularly to Obamacare except that it's actually in there, right? As well, so it's one part of it. As well, because many workers pass up opportunities for self-employment or positions working for small firms because they fear losing their health insurance or facing higher premiums. 2 points here. Dude, none of these economists who signed it know that there isn't something called the COBRA Act, COBRA, that people take advantage of when they leave a firm, whether they want to start a firm or not start a firm, and that they actually, it's on the law today for 18 months or a couple of years, you just on your employer's health insurance. As long as you've worked there for a little, some period of time. Then the other thing is there something about starting a new business that we're supposed to subsidize, you and I? Is there something about that? If you're working at IBM and you're sitting in a cubicle, you're out in the sales force, and you want to start a new company, great. That's what we're doing here. No one subsidized it. Just go do it. But is there something about it that we're supposed to do for all the fledgling hot dog stands? Everybody on Silicon Valley? No. If you're an entrepreneur, you just suck it up and you do it. You don't want things to be put in your way like regulation. That's a topic of a different show. Second, they say, Affordable Care Act contains essentially every cost containment provision policy analysts have considers effective in reducing the rate of medical spending. Payment innovations. We don't have payment innovations. We were funding companies back on payment innovations back when I was at Morgan Keegan. Or I didn't want to fund this one particular one, but people were doing that. Such as greater reimbursement for patient-centered primary care. That's a government decision that goes on all the time. It's not Obamacare. It's been going on all the time. The government has changed reimbursement rates for dialysis providers. They lowered them. Took Tokos Medical years ago in the 90s down to like almost nothing. They raised them for other things. That's not part of Obamacare necessarily. It's been on the books forever. An independent payment advisory board. This is what Governor Palin referred to as the death panels, with authority to make recommendations to reduce cost growth and improve quality within both Medicare and the healthcare system as a whole. So government people are going to be doing this? A new innovation center within the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And can you imagine what the new innovation center looks like inside of Medicare and Medicaid? They're going to be charged with streamlining the testing of demonstration and pilot projects. I can't read it without laughing. These aren't serious economists. They're trusting the same people who rolled out healthcare.gov to have innovation centers. It's this blind thought that somehow people working for the government come up with great innovations. No, there's some guy who quit his job. He was working at Stryker Medical. And he's got 10 guys really smart with him right now. And he's got a new medical product device, a new something for your knee. He's in a cellar right now. He's got it on a lathe. He's going to go through 10 years through FDA testing. That's where the innovation comes from. Can you imagine what the Innovation Center looks like in Medicare and Medicaid through federal workers? They've got measures to inform patients and payers about the quality of medical care providers. I had a guy on the show. That's what's going to reduce the cost of medicine. He's Smith out of Oklahoma. He's in Oklahoma City. He's got this stuff on the screen you can go to right now and see how much it costs for a shoulder operation. That's the transparency that we need. That's not in here. Wouldn't that be one of the ones? Increased funding from comparative effectiveness research. This is an article that says nothing. Taken together, oh, by the way, increased emphasis on wellness and prevention. So all these economists are writing in 2011. By the way, I get a call it seems like every night from my health insurance company telling me that they've got something on wellness and prevention, to the point where I say, stop calling. I actually know. Taken together, these provisions are likely to reduce employer spending on health insurance. And now we know it's not. One study concludes that repealing the Affordable Care Act would produce job reductions of 250,000 to 400,000 annually over the next decade. Worker mobility would be impaired. This is getting rid of, so the opposite of getting rid of. Repealing Obamacare. Worker mobility would be impaired, as well as people locked into less productive jobs. It goes on and on. I mean, that goes on for a couple more paragraphs. I won't read it to you. We're getting rid of the next break. I think it's important that we understand that that these people, senior fellow at the Brookings Institute named Henry Aaron, if you meet him on the street, tell him he should quit. Sylvia Allegretto, economist at UCal Berkeley, points out a whole nother, she should retire. There's a whole other topic that someone could actually put this out. It got published. People respected it. They took it to the bank. And now we know, and we knew then, that none of this was true. Obamacare is going to cost millions of jobs and job equivalents. And when you add it in with all the other disincentives to work, we are changing America from the pull it up from your bootstraps type mentality to everybody trying to make sure that everybody else has the same income. And people are suffering because of it. People who could have been great. People who could have done something with their lives more. People who will look back in 6 and say, why did I do that? And the other thing that's happening is we're turning into a nation, slowly but surely, maybe quicker than we think. Oh, I got to take a break. Quicker than we think, of a country that doesn't want to be the best. Where lots of our people, and then we have people on a very small amount of people who are producing a lot more of the jobs on their shoulders. And a lot of people not being able to be all they can be. Steve Laffey's Fixing America is a very troubling show. I'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Well, I finally did it. I opened a 401k.
What? Why? Just wait for the inheritance. We've definitely got a rich uncle somewhere. We're one call away from the winner's circle at the Derby, dinners with multiple forks, a vacation home in the country, using summer as a verb.
You don't actually think that, do you?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs, the Rhode Island Society of CPAs, and the Ad Council.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared.
It's like tiny nails in the air poke my lungs.
I start to cough. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital.
Today, 1 out of 13 children suffer from some form of asthma, accounting for nearly 1/3 of all emergency room visits.
I feel like I'm choking. It's kind of like an elephant is on my chest. A little whistle sound comes out when I breathe.
But while your child may suffer from asthma, asthma doesn't have to make your child suffer. There are simple ways you can prevent your child's next attack. To learn more, log on to www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many.
I feel like a fish with no water.
Brought to you by the EPA, the Ad Council, and this station.
I am an American soldier.
I'm a warrior and a member of a team.
I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values.
I will always place this first.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never quit.
I will never leave a fallen comrade.
I am disciplined.
I am disciplined.
Physically and mentally tough.
Trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills.
I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself.
I am an expert and I am a professional.
I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the
enemies of the United States of America in close combat.
I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
There's strong, and there's Army strong. See what it takes at GoArmy.com.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
And what the Congressional Budget Office is saying is that we're going to discourage kids having to have latchkey. We're going to have parents being able to come home working reasonable hours. People are going to be able to retire. People might be able to actually cook dinner rather than have to order out and get some takeout. I mean, the fact is that if Americans can have more choices to open up a new business they've been wanting to start, this is a good thing. You know, if you look at international comparisons country by country, Americans work way more than the average of industrialized countries around the world. And, you know, we might want to look at our work-life balance, and this is something that gives us a great opportunity.
One of the reasons why what? Like, what is going on? What was he talking about? Latchkey kids? How does that work? Except this guy, that was Ellison, Keith Ellison, a Democrat from Minnesota. Latchkey kids? They're going to be cooking dinners? No, we're going to solve the obesity problem because no one's going to be going to McDonald's. All because of Obamacare. This is the flexibility argument. They're nuts. Total nutcases in our U.S. Congress. I don't know whether I've ever met Congressman Ellison, whether he believes his stuff or got talking points from Nancy Pelosi or whatever. I don't know. But it's an illness to think that by chopping people's hours right now, and by the way, if that was really going to happen, why aren't we all in on, why is Obama delaying it? Let's get all in. Get everybody out of work. Let's all work 3 hours less next week. No, it needs to happen. People who believe, one day people just got to say, we're not showing up for work. Like, we're not doing this anymore. Like, you people are nuts. What do you mean I was working 40 hours a week and my employer just said, I'm going to work 29 hours a week. And I got to go find another 11 hours. Where do you find the other 11 hours? Was it next door? Did the jobs all appear like you walk out, instead of walking out at 4, you walk out at 1:45? And literally you transport, like the Jetsons? You just, boop, or Star Trek, you just transport yourself to another job. You got to drive, you got to pay a toll, you got to get more gas, you got to wear different clothes. Like, stop it. This is their argument. Now, he was talking at that time with Tom Cole, who's a Republican out of, I don't know where, Oklahoma. Here's Tom Cole in this conversation that went on a couple days ago. Retorting this guy Ellison out of Minnesota.
But the CBO report did not say that it was going to result in 2 million fewer jobs.
I didn't say that either, but it does disincentivize it. Well, it's kind of, what the CBO report does say is that we're going to lose 1 to 2% of hours worked because of this. And, you can argue that's a good thing. I've heard that argument. It gives some people some choices, and I have no doubt in some cases it is. But, again, discouraging work is not something we need to be doing right. Our economy marginally less productive, not a good thing. And again, it's not like this is the only flaw in Obamacare. We've got a raft of them to talk about.
Discouraging work, says the Republican from Oklahoma, is not something we should be doing. Kudos. We've been doing it since '64. We spend 16 times more on these type of programs that discourage work, that keep people from working and from getting ahead in life, 16 times more adjusted for inflation than we did in '64 when the war on poverty started. And what do we got? I mean, I drive down the street and I get this one statistic in my head. I keep thinking, I look to my left, I look to my right, I drive out to Greeley, I go down to Denver, go north to Cheyenne, Wyoming, think about the old streets in Edgewood, Shore Avenue where I grew up, count 5 houses. 4. One of those, I'm on food stamps. And in that neighborhood, it's 2. This neighborhood, maybe it's less. That's it? That's where we are? That's what Congress is okay with by passing the Farm Bill? Another disincentive to work? Nothing attached to it? So it's not just a CBO thing. We take these things tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, and they're going to argue about the CBO study. And Steve Laffey's Fixing America. If you're just tuning in, we appreciate it. We're on Facebook. We put out stuff all the time. Go to our website, Laffey Radio. It really is good. They did a great job with these guys. Tremendous. Lots of information there. But it's not just this study about 2.5 million job equivalents being lost. It's the human spirit that's being denied. That's the problem. That's what we got to get out of. That's why it's not just a tiny change we need. We need a giant shift back to freedom. This doesn't let people live free. By the way, let's hear the end of this conversation. It's short. This is Cole and Ellison. Cole being the Republican, Ellison being the Democrat.
One of the reasons why Americans live better than people around the world, because they do on balance.
Well, what about Germany? What about Denmark? What about, the fact of the matter is, we need a better work-life balance. Ask a working mother, okay, if she could use a few more hours in a day to take care of her family. That's what's really going on.
Great spin. I don't think it's going to work.
It's true.
What about Denmark? What about Germany? There's an elected official in America talking about Denmark. They got like 5 million people over there on a piece of land that's flat as a pancake. They got no national defense. I mean, by the way, if you want to ride a bike to work, do it in Denmark. It's flat as a pancake. You know? Good-looking people. All seem to be in shape. I don't know. They must have a McDonald's. But we're not here to emulate Denmark, are we? Germany, weren't they responsible for 2 world wars? I mean, I love the Germans today, but we're really trying to emulate their work. I mean, they got one good idea over there. They make sure everything's made in Germany. You don't go over there and find stuff made in China. And their angle is to make all those other people around other countries, they don't realize it, make them work for them. That's Germany's angle. Buy our stuff, and we'll keep funding you dollars, Greeks, right? We'll keep sending you dollars somehow, some way through this convoluted process, but you keep buying German stuff because we got to keep our people working. As long as you do that, we'll make that the lost leader for the Greeks. We're not trying to emulate Germany, are we? You think that single mother's saying, by the way, we got to stop having so many single moms. I mean, unwed marriage. I mean, people who have these children without getting married, we're forcing them into poverty. We've done shows on that. We don't want them there. But because all the programs we've had, look at what we've got. Births out of wedlock skyrocketed. All populations. Let's play. We got time. No, we don't have time. I'm gonna get this stuff in the last break. I'm not even getting. I mean, we're not even getting to the report. Let's just go to start the report. But the absolute inability of people. Here's a story. Mainstream media whitewashes CBO Obamacare report. It's not just one person. It seems like everybody on one side of the aisle. They got stories why the CBO report on Obamacare is good news. Of the Los Angeles Times. It's a positive element. It frees millions from virtual bondage of job lock. As if you can point to one thing, back to healthcare, what we want. We obviously want people to not be stuck in Virginia. I met a lady on a plane. She wanted to move to Colorado, her and her husband. They had a sick daughter. And because of not being able to get health insurance, they thought in Colorado, they couldn't leave Virginia. They had to stay with the jobs they had in Virginia. I get that. And I guess under Obamacare, you can that's part of the program. We could have done that without Obamacare. Without figuratively putting a gun at employers' heads, said, you will pay this fine if you don't provide health insurance for these workers. We could have done that. And we should do that. Everybody gets that part. And we don't want people to be dropped off their health insurance. We get that. Of course, the Republicans did nothing about this when they had a chance. Let's take an early break here, come back with these clips, see if we can even delve into this whole report. But this is one of the most disturbing shows that we've had to do because it all comes together. It all comes together with the corruption in Washington, the debt ceiling being raised, the CBO reports of how much more this is going to cost America and our deficit, how less money will come into the coffers, but they raise the debt ceiling and just go home for vacation and couldn't care less about our children. Be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Picture this, your next trip, Utah, 5 national parks. First, Zion. You're walking, the ground rises, the ground drops, the ground becomes water. Next, Bryce. You're riding a mule. You're riding a mule under giant orange drip castles. You are not dreaming. You will not forget this. On to Capitol Reef. Take the scenic route, the really scenic route. Take a path you've never taken and see the stars for the first time. Now for Canyonlands. You're riding a bike. You're riding a bike on Mars. Now you're riding the rapids. Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, Classic. Arches, 5:32 a.m. Some things are worth racing the sunrise for. The horizon lightens. You round the corner. Whoa. This is Life Elevated. The Mighty Five. 5 iconic parks, 1 epic experience. Plan your trip at visitutah.com.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
I'm always up for a challenge. It's the feeling of accomplishment that drives me. And there's no better challenge than serving part-time in the Coast Guard Reserve. I protect my country, work with the best and brightest. I get great pay and benefits in return. The Coast Guard Reserve is important work. I get to serve my community, and it's always rewarding.
If you were born ready, there's a new challenge waiting for you. Learn about serving part-time at gocoastguard.com/reserve.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Obamacare has been an issue from day one that has hurt Democrats and helped Republicans. It cost them the House. I think it ate into the president's reelection totals. It's hurting them now. It's not going to go away because it's fundamentally a flawed, bad policy. And anything that discourages work, and that's essentially what the CBO found, that this discourages some people from working, not a good thing at a time when the economy is still struggling.
No, not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Steve Laffey here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We appreciate you showing up, listening in. We always tell people this who are new listeners, you don't have to listen to this live like we're doing it now. You can just put it on your car, put it on your self-loading app, and just play it on the way home. And we find more and more people doing that as they're getting out of work, even going in the next morning. Some people call me and told me they're on long trips and they just play 3 or 4 of them. And don't forget, Fixing America Presents, which I want you to send around to other people and tell people about. We have a new one on the Farm Bill today. But today we're discussing the CBO, Congressional Budget Office's redoing of how much worse it is for incentives for work that is Obamacare. But let's not just let's play a couple of these clips before we get through this. Here is Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland in one of the most unbelievable clips we played before, and such a lack of man living outside reality.
Do we as a government want to have a policy that gives people a disincentive to work and then makes all of us taxpayers pay for that?
Well, a significant number of these people are in what we call job lock. They're in their employment solely because that's their only option to get health benefits. Now individuals have other options. This is a voluntary choice, as you pointed out, whether you want to work or not. And it shouldn't be because you're locked into a job because of health benefits. Let me also point out
but again, Senator Cardin, if I may, though, I understand if somebody doesn't want to work and they can get their health benefits, and in fact they'll get them cheaper because the subsidy rises as their income lowers, that's fine. But why do I, or you as a taxpayer, why do we have to subsidize that?
Well, in some cases, these people might have 2 jobs right now because of the circumstances for their health benefits. One of those jobs are no longer going to work. People do work 2 full-time jobs today in order to be able to get their health benefits. Now they don't need to work 2 full-time jobs to get their health benefits. And the point I want to raise is that these jobs will be filled. It's not going to have an impact on our economy. We have people waiting to work. So these jobs will all be filled. Our economy will move forward. The bottom line is that now everyone will have access to affordable health care. Before they didn't.
Who is working full-time, 2 full-time jobs? Does one job pay half of your health insurance? Is he saying, do you hear that? It's one of the most ludicrous things I've ever heard. 2 full-time jobs means you go to work. Now, some people are, by the way. Go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, take a lunch break, you're out at 4, you start work somewhere else at 8 o'clock at night, you're out at 4 o'clock in the morning, you shower, shave, and head back to the next job. Effectively. 2 full-time jobs, 2 40-hour jobs at 2 different places. Some people are doing that. But is he saying one or two things? Both are ridiculous because Obamacare costs more, as we know. I had a friend of mine. He has 8 employees, 4 partners. I was talking to him on his birthday. His health insurance, they're all doing it for themselves, and they're paying for their workers. Went from $800 a month to $2,000 a month. So it's not that Obamacare is cheaper, and we know the disincentives to work are there because they charge you more as your income goes up. But overall, it's more expensive. We know that. We're not being flooded with Obamacare supporters saying, my health insurance, this is unbelievable, went down $300. No one's calling in saying that. No show, no TV, no letters to the editors. It's not happening. It's not. Might be staying the same for some people, but whether they have the state exchange this year, they went into whatever. But no one's saying this. So what's he talking about? Do you notice he used the word job locked? That this is now better because people aren't job locked? It's a talking point. Let's get to the president. What did the president have to say about this? By the way, I don't know what to do if I see these people. How do you be polite to someone like Senator Ben Cardin? I guess I would. Hello, Senator. Nice to meet you. Your attitude is destroying the country, but nice to meet you. Here's President Obama speaking yesterday. And remember, he's got the French president sitting next to him, so he's comparing it to his analysis of French and so forth. At least he's not saying he can do whatever he wants today, but listen to him.
We have a unique system compared to many parts of the world, including France, where partly because of historical accident and some decisions that FDR made during wartime back in World War II, our healthcare has been much more tied to employers. That's not the case in most other developed countries. It has worked for a long time, but what is also true is that it has meant for a lot of U.S. companies a greater burden, more costs relative to their international competitors. That's a challenge. It's also meant that folks who were self-employed, for example, or independent contractors weren't always getting the same deal as somebody who had a job. It meant that folks who worked for small businesses sometimes had more trouble getting decent premiums and decent rates than folks with large companies. So it just created a great amount of unevenness in the system. I don't think that an employer-based system is going to be or should be replaced anytime soon. But what the Affordable Care Act does do is it gives people some flexibility. It says if I'm working at a big company like IBM or Google and I decide I want to start my own company, that I'm not going to be inhibited from starting a new company because I'm worried about keeping health insurance for myself and my family. I can go make that move. If I'm a woman who's and I'd really like to work with them on the farm, but we can't afford health insurance on our own, so I've been working at the county clerk's office for the last 10 years. Now maybe I've got the opportunity to no longer work in a different job and instead work on that farm and increase the likelihood of economic success for my family. So it's giving people more flexibility and more opportunity to do what makes sense for them. And ultimately, I think that's going to be good.
Do you notice how he tied a lot of things in there? One, it's the extreme example. I always find the extreme example. There's a farmer, his wife goes and gets a job for health insurance, undoubtedly happening somewhere in America today. And because of Obamacare, she can quit her job and just help out on the farm and increase productivity by doubles to pay for her salary. Undoubtedly, that's somewhere someone's going to do just that. Then, there's always just one example. Forget about the fact that it must be much more expensive to do Obamacare than, maybe she likes her job, maybe you don't want to leave, maybe she doesn't like to take care of the pigs. But there is somebody out there who fits this example. I've dealt with this so many times in politics where people come up with the extreme example. What about the 85-year-old quadriplegic? All right, they can keep their pension, whatever. Then you've got the situation, of course, he goes through the unique system and didn't want to do away with any of the employer stuff. But somehow he's got it in his mind, first of all, that he can control the economy. In other words, things were uneven. Did you hear that part? So this is President Obama's mentality. Things shouldn't be uneven, and he's going to make them even. Big companies were doing this, small companies were doing this, and somehow it shouldn't have been like this. It's amazing. He thinks he can control the economy when he really can't, or he's trying to. That people will seek another way, like they've been doing before. We had a lousy health insurance system, where you could get dropped when you came down with cancer. You couldn't take it across state lines. When people were begging for a system that because of whether it was bad luck or bad genes, they wouldn't be dropped, and they could and three, they could take it across state lines so they could move and be more mobile. We could have solved those problems. Republicans should have tried to solve those problems when they had a chance. They didn't. But somehow Obamacare means that the economy is more flexible, even though it's in total denial of the recent CBO report. And the CBO report goes into so many things that we didn't get to because we're near the end of the time here. But some of them, just to let you know as we conclude, the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, came out with a new report, and I think they totally underestimate, because I believe that this is just another layer added on to all the other layers that we have that are disincentives for people to work, and that's why people aren't working as much, and why we're missing 10 million jobs out of the last recovery, and while Social Security disability, people going on it is skyrocketing far more than people can possibly becoming disabled, because it's now becoming a mentality in America that we've got to stop, and I think people would welcome that we stop. But it goes along with all, and by the way, let me go back to, because this is going to end. He mentioned about big business. This is where Republicans have lost the Reagan Democrats. They lost it over moving all the manufacturing outside of the country, and people knew it. Those were the Reagan Democrats. Those are the people they were trying to get. They lost it over allowing illegal immigration to let people come into this country and work for such reduced levels under the table, wherever it may be, that those were the Reagan Democrats. And now it's big business that wants this, basically. Because what do they want? They want to lower, and they want to get off this and throw people into Medicare and Medicaid as quick as they can, whether it's through the pension system, whether it's through people working. They want to reduce their costs even more so they can make more money. And along the way, the same thing, at the same time that's happening, it's not a coincidence that both parties have given in on even talking about debt ceilings happening today at the same time. So Obamacare is more expensive. There'll be massive disincentives to work, as cited. That's why I probably didn't go through this. Think about it. Think about the employees they talk about here. It's in part of the report, they talk about the people between 50 and 100 workers, that there might be people keeping it at 49 workers, because once you get to 50, you've got to stop paying for it. They'll just be, you watch it, come back and play this clip in a couple of years. There'll be a guy with 4 firms, all seemingly doing the same thing, each with 49 employees. He'll have 196 employees. And he'll get sued by the federal government for going around the law. People who are real entrepreneurs go around the law. The CBO has just pointed out something, a story for the day, but it's much bigger than that. It's the cumulative effect of what we're doing here in America to destroy people's lives and keeping them permanently down so they cannot be what they want to be and have less incentive to do so. That's what's going on in America, and this recent CBO report is just the latest manifestation. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We got to sign off. We appreciate you tuning in. Talk to you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network, LLC is prohibited.